Hey everyone, this is Daniel,
And I'm Jun,
and we are
Korean.
American. Hey Jin,
Hey Daniel,
how's your weekend?
before we get into my weekend, again, we have to mention your hair. Is this gonna become our thing where you come up with a different hairstyle every episode?
I mean, this
That would be
time,
epic.
not every episode. June, it's been 6 weeks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This time, I admit, my hairstyle is dramatically different.
Mm.
Last time, I felt like it wasn't that different. But yeah, last week, I got my first ever perm.
Yeah.
Or pama, as they say in
Yeah.
Korea.
You got the default Korean cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The official name is called the Aja perm, which I
What,
think
the Ajep perm?
see, that's what I think it's the Hangulization of as perm, as, just like as it is. I think it's a
Really?
very casual perm.
Wait, so how do you say in Korean?
Aja,
Aju?
Aja, like as.
I cannot not research this. Aju perm? Oh, Eju
Oh,
perm?
Aja perm. But June, I also thought it was like Aja, like Ajashi perm, right? Because that's a thing, right? Calling something an Achuma perm. I think that's a thing, at least for Korean Americans.
As perm.
But I think when I mentioned this to the hairstylist, he was very confused because I don't think it's Aja like an old Ajashi perm. I think it's as like,
Isn't it such a odd naming?
okay, it is an odd naming, but I think I'm used to that by now.
It's so odd. Or like it's a more sophisticated way of naming things compared to how other things are named in Korea, isn't it? Like as perm.
As perm, yeah.
Or maybe they just made something up that just sounds kind of cool.
I
As
don't
they
know.
do with the namings of the apartments here.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Just random English word.
Yeah. Why is it called as? So you got a perm that's called an as perm?
It's called the Aja perm. It sounds
In
like
the US,
as perm.
yeah. They would never name it as perm.
That also just came to me too. But yeah, it's my first ever perm, and I didn't realize how intense it would be because actually, okay, I've gotten what's called a down perm. I mentioned my previous. Okay, sorry, backing up. More context.
Yes.
As I'm not sure what my long-term timeline in Korea is, I'm very motivated now to do all things Korean while I'm here. And so one of them is getting as many, I guess, trendy Korean style haircuts as possible. And so my first one was the dandy cut with a down perm, which
You said it was like a see-through something.
oh, see through dandy, see-through dandy
Okay.
cut. And this is the second in this series of trending Korean hairstyles. And I got the Aja perm,
Edge.
edge perm.
Yeah.
But again, I thought it'd be like the down perm, which didn't feel that intense.
Oh, you didn't even know what the procedure was like. But
No, no.
didn't they show you the after picture or something?
Yeah, the after looked more natural. And again, this is like 1 weekend, so it'll
Yeah.
fade over time.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I got the Aja perm. My wife agrees. I've never looked more Korean. I honestly have to like sometimes double take in the mirror,
Yeah.
not to see if I look good or whatever. I just don't recognize myself.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's definitely, I'm not used to it yet. Yeah. So
So I have two things to talk about, or questions rather. Number one, so okay, obviously, do you like it?
Yeah.
And number two, I feel like if you look more Korean,
Yeah.
it might be more inconvenient to you.
oh,
It's like they
yeah,
have an
yeah,
expectation that you might speak and understand
Yeah.
Korean very fluently.
yeah. Okay, let me answer them in turn. The first one, do I like it? I don't not like it. I don't like this as much as the previous one.
Uh-huh.
The previous hairstyle felt more natural to me and more my style. My wife says she likes this one more. She says it adds more volume to my hair. That is a thought that I've never had. Hair volume, I've never thought of these things before. So yeah, so I guess that's all that matters. Yeah.
And so is it inconvenient to you?
Oh,
So
yeah.
a similar comparison would be if I go to Japan,
Yeah.
because we naturally look kind of similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think everyone just quickly assumes that I am Japanese.
Yeah.
And so it's like good and bad at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's bad is when you, like, it's always a surprise
Yeah.
for
When you start
the person,
talking.
like the store person, and I don't want to surprise them.
Mm-hmm.
Because like they speak in Japanese for like 3 minutes straight.
Yeah.
And like there's no timing for me to say sorry, I don't understand. And they say it for like 3 minutes, and then I have to say sorry.
Sorry, yeah.
And then that typical Japanese reaction of like, I was like,
Oh.
I'm like, I'm so sorry.
Overly apologetic.
Yeah.
Okay. I definitely get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't think it's impacted me either way. And what I mean is, I don't have enough social interaction with people for it to come up. And in line with the pros are, I feel like I blend in even more. So yeah, that's, I've said many times I like that about being in Korea. So I think it's only good in a sense. And already, even with any other previous hairstyles or clothes or whatever, as soon as I talk, within seconds for me, they know it's my accent or lack of vocabulary. So yeah, I don't think it's impacted me at all in that sense.
Okay. Kind of linking back to our MBTI episode.
Okay.
When you said you have no social interaction,
Yeah.
my immediate thought was like, I'm so jealous. 아, 좋겠다.
It's not bad. Yeah. I do. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say I miss it, but do I miss it because I feel like I should have it, or do I actually really miss it? I do miss having deeper, meaningful relationships, but the day-to-day kind of casual social stuff, I don't really miss that. So yeah, AM, I am an I, not an E. Okay.
My weekend?
Yeah, how was your weekend?
Nothing special. I didn't do anything special on Friday. By the way, my theory is if you have a very long Friday evening, it makes your weekend feel a lot longer.
Oh, longer.
Yeah, so I try to have an event every Friday evening as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
Because like if you have a very eventful Friday evening, it feels like the next day is Sunday for some reason, but then you have another day because it's a Saturday.
Oh, that's really weird. Interesting.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think in my experience, and to be clear, it's been a long time since I've had an eventful Friday. I feel like it made the weekend feel shorter because Saturday's kind of a lost day, right? If you're tired, hungover, whatever from Friday, then your Saturday's kind of lost, and then you have Sunday, and then it's the weekend's over.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, that's my theory. But this Friday, I didn't do anything special, I think, which made my weekend feel very short.
Yeah.
But on Saturday, I did go out, hang out with my friends. So we went to this place called Haebangchon. Do you know where Haebangchon is? It's like a little, like one subway station westwards from Itaewon.
Oh, okay.
And it's like where all the really authentic, quote unquote, foreign cuisine is.
Oh.
Because that's what Itaewon used to be,
Yeah.
but then it got gentrified.
I see.
And then they moved out a little bit westwards. So
Okay.
that's where like all the foreigners hang out.
Yeah.
And so we went to this Moroccan restaurant.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Did you
Which I really used to like.
Did you eat with your hands?
I don't think that's Moroccan style, is it?
Isn't it like a giant, kind of large pita bread with
As
rice
far
and
as
meat on
I know,
top?
that's Ethiopian.
Oh. What is Moroccan food like then?
I was kind of afraid that you would ask that. I don't know exactly.
Okay.
But there are a lot of like lamb,
Yeah, lamb.
couscous, and like that kind of thing.
Okay,
Shakshuka? Is that Moroccan?
Shakshuka. Oh, June. Shakshuka, I think, is like the... Oh, what's the dip thing? Oh, my gosh. What's the Jewish, Middle Eastern, Israeli thing? Hummus, okay.
Oh, hummus.
June, I think... What did you just say?
Shakshuka?
I think shakshuka is like the African version of hummus in that every region or culture has their own distinct like bend to it.
Yeah.
And they all fight over whose is the original, most authentic, etc.
Interesting.
I believe. I'm not sure. Yeah,
We
that
should
might
get
be
an
completely
African
ignorant.
person here.
We should.
I don't know if African people get offended by saying, "Are you African?"
Oh, because it's a continent, not a country.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I might offend some people, or at least Ethiopian or Moroccan people here.
Yeah.
Anyways, there was this Moroccan restaurant which I used to like from
Oh,
at least 10 years ago. It was still there.
nice.
It gained more popularity for some reason.
Yeah.
That was good. And then we walked a little bit towards Itaewon and went to a bowling alley.
Oh, bowling.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was gonna say an all-American classic, but is
Is it?
bowling popular here in Korea?
I think so. It's not as popular as like you go drinking and then go to karaoke.
Uh-huh.
It's not that much of a ritual.
Yeah.
But there are bowling alleys, at least in like more the crowded districts, at least one or two.
I don't think I've ever seen a bowling alley in Korea.
Oh, you haven't?
Yeah.
I think it's because there's none here in Pangyo,
Okay.
as far as I know.
Yeah.
We should open up a bowling alley here.
Is it okay? Okay. Is bowling a popular icha thing? That's what you're saying. So that's like the genre. You would bucket it as a thing you do after you drink as a second round.
I think it's more of a thing that you do after you eat,
Oh, before you drink.
because you don't want to be too drunk to play bowling.
Why
Or-
not?
I've seen. I think manners plays more into the part of bowling
Oh,
in
like
Korea than it is
Bowling
in
alley etiquette in Korea?
Americans are so loud and crazy when you go to a bowling alley.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. But it's like there's common manners in
Okay.
bowling where if like someone else is up in the alley, you don't like go up there.
Oh my gosh, what?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
I
like
need
a common manner.
I need to go to a Korean bowling alley gym.
Yeah. To be fair, a lot of people still do that.
Okay.
But it is a thing. Like you shouldn't distract the other person.
Okay, wait. When you go bowling with your friends,
Mm-hmm.
are you taking it seriously?
No, but it always involves a neki.
Like a bet?
Yeah.
Okay.
To pay for the thing.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
But it just I can imagine Koreans taking bowling very seriously.
It
Like-
used to be like that
Yeah.
when I was growing up.
Uh-huh.
Like bowling alleys were more serious, but I think after some years, the quote unquote pub style
Yeah.
bowling alley became a thing,
I see.
and now it's more of a party vibe.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was your weekend?
I didn't do too much. Again, it's just stuff with the kids. Last Thursday, our older two kids had the day off.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why they had the day off, Jun?
No,
Sunung, is that right? Did I pronounce it right?
sunung.
Sunung.
Oh yeah.
Korean SATs.
Oh yeah, it was sunung on Thursday.
Yeah, yeah. So
For
our
some reason, when I was growing up, it was always on a Wednesday. I don't know when it's shifted to a
interesting.
Thursday. Yeah.
Nothing in my day to day was impacted by
Mm-hmm.
Sunung other than our kids having the day off. I think because they might be using
It as a
the school as a test site.
Yeah.
But anyway, I took the chance to take our older two kids along with my wife to Seoulland.
Seoulland.
Seoulland,
Oh,
which is
interesting. It's
by the Grand Seoul Park.
I don't know where both either is.
It's in
So-
Gwacheon.
Oh, it's in Gwacheon. Okay.
There's a giant hose or lake there.
Uh-huh.
And all around the lake, there's like a science museum. There's a Seoul Grand Park, Seoul Zoo, and then Seoulland. Yeah. It gave a little bit of a carnival vibe. Like it's definitely an older theme park or amusement park. The rides are a bit kind of carnival-y, let's say. But it was fun. Yeah, it was a good time. And honestly, I remember our daughter saying, "Oh wow, I can't remember the last time it was just us four."
Oh.
So I thought that was kind of nice. Yeah.
Oh.
Just to have time with the older two kids. And I have to admit, even before going, what went through my mind was, is this even right? We're leaving our third kid out because she has school that
yeah.
day. And I even was like, maybe we should pull her out of school so we can do this as a family. But in retrospect, I actually think it was nice that it was just the four of us.
It's very interesting that your daughter sort of have that subgroup in mind
Yeah.
of like the four of us.
Yeah, I mean,
Do you think your first would have like the three of us kind of thing?
You know, he was so young. Our first two are 22 months apart. Our oldest has never probably can't even remember any time when it was just him. So, yeah. Speaking of that,
how many years apart from your second to your third?
Second to third is 2.5, and then third to fourth is 3. So it's a little bit longer. But what you just said reminds me though. Maybe it's the pictures. This is actually really funny. Not funny. This is actually a little sad. We have a giant family photo hanging in our house when it was just 5 of us.
Oh.
And every time I look at that, and our youngest now is looking at it, pointing at it, saying, mom, dad, brother, sister, whatever. Every time she does that, it breaks my heart. Because I'm wondering if she's internalizing, like, why am I not in this family photo?
Didn't you take like the 백일 picture? Or...
Yeah, we do have one photo of the 4 kids in our kind of foyer, like when we first walk into the house.
Yeah.
But we don't have a big family portrait hanging where it's the 6 of us. We need to get one, but, kind of lazy. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. I think that's... Oh, I guess the final thing we could mention as intro is I think winter has officially come now. Yeah, it rained a little bit late last week, and now it is legit cold. Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned it in our previous episode, but there's this concept called the 수능 한파. Whenever they take the 수능, it all of a sudden becomes very cold.
I don't think you mentioned that,
Yeah, so there's a thing called 수능 한파.
That's the Korean version of Groundhog Day.
Oh, kind of, yeah. It is.
Except it always gets cold after Sunung. Sunung's not like a arbiter of things to come. Yeah.
And you sent me a picture in Kakao and you went to one of my favorite restaurants in the neighborhood.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah. So, super fan of the podcast, one of our very first super fans, GK. I didn't realize she knew that you had mentioned this restaurant as one of your favorite restaurants. So then she wanted to take us there. And then when we got there, I think she was surprised to know I didn't know that. June, for me, Korean names in general, whether it's a person, a restaurant, whatever, it means nothing to me. It doesn't stick with me. It doesn't register. But anyway, this is one of the, I think you mentioned your favorite restaurants.
To be fair, the name of the restaurant is oddly long, even for a Korean.
Okay.
So there's a sort of like a shortening of it. Can we mention the restaurant name?
You already did on a previous episode. So.
Yeah, it is called 산으로 간 고등어.
Okay, yeah. I don't know.
And so I think the shortened version of that is 산간고.
산간고.
Like the first letter of each, whatever, yeah.
줄임말.
줄임말. Yeah.
But no, this place was so good. The banchan was, maybe 6 to 8. So not a lot of banchan per se, but it was so fresh and each one was so good. And then the godongo, I think, is the namesake of the restaurant or the signature dish.
Mackerel.
It was grilled to perfection. It was so good.
They have sorry, go ahead.
And then they had japchae.
Their japchae is next
good.
level.
Yeah.
It's the only restaurant that I know in Korea that I've been to that has like a dedicated japchae cooking station.
Oh, yeah.
Like in a hotel buffet.
I know,
yeah. They have this chef who's like constantly stir frying the japchae on the spot, right? And then, but I kind of feel bad.
Why?
Like the one downside of that is that I always have to ask.
Ask what?
Ask for japchae when I go there.
Oh,
versus if it's just there, you just take it.
Oh, it is self though.
It's
Maybe
self?
they changed it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. As far as I remember, it was a thing where you have to ask, like in a hotel buffet, you have to ask for the eggs or something.
No. They had so they still had the man working the grill, cooking the japchae, and I was watching him. June, this guy was working nonstop. He was constantly flipping the japchae over, making sure it was like perfectly cooked.
Yeah.
And then he loads it onto the serving tray in front of him, and that's self. So japchae is self now.
Yeah. Japchae is self. They have a patent of cooking the 고등어. I think they have like this device thing they made themselves.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That seems very Japanese to me. Like the ultimate cooking perfection way of cooking the 고등어, the mackerel.
Yeah.
But this restaurant was awesome. Yeah, thank you again to GK because June, the line was no joke. We got there at 11. There was already 100 people waiting. And apparently if you want to get seated at 11, you have to line up at 10. But if you get there at 11, you don't get seated until 12:31. So literally 1 to 2 hour wait.
Yeah. We should open up a bowling alley right next to that restaurant.
So they can go while they wait. I thought you were going to say we should open up that same chain
Oh no.
nearby. June, I think the reason why it's so popular, not only is it so good, the value, the gassengbi is out of control. It's not very expensive.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
right. But the 가성비, like time 가성비 wise, I don't think
Oh,
it is
yeah,
that
yeah,
good because I
exactly.
don't think it's worth that much of a wait.
Well, June,
It is good though.
you know who has a lot of time, maybe not as much money? Old people.
Are you referring to yourself as old people?
No, well, that too. I think
Like actually old people.
the restaurant was full of mostly people, I think, who have a lot of time on their hands
Ah.
that are willing to wait an hour for a delicious meal at a good price. But you're right. I think my lifestyle these days is akin to someone 1 or 2 decades older than me. Yeah.
You know what's really interesting? When I was growing up, cooking fish at home was a very normal thing, but I don't think a lot of people do it anymore
Yeah.
because it smells a lot.
That's such a modern Korean mentality,
Isn't
I
it,
feel.
right?
Yeah.
So like these so-called 생선구이 restaurants, I think they're very popular.
Because of that, no
Yeah,
one cooks
'cause-
fish at home.
Yeah. Like whenever I go there, it's like, oh, I can't remember the last time I had fish
Yeah.
this way.
Ah.
Yeah.
You know,
But
I
it was a
think,
thing that I was growing up. It was a very common thing that you can see in the like daily on your table. But yeah.
Koreans are so, I think, mindful of smell, right? Much more than I've ever been. And even to the point, 2 things I'll call out. One, Korean apartments, when we were doing like tours or viewings, they always have like a small grill, or when we go to the outdoor area, they're like, oh, you can cook fish here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you can cook fish inside too.
Yeah.
Right? But they're like, well, it smells. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, doesn't register to me the same way as a Korean. And then two, this was a comment, so I don't want to. There was a comment on one of our reels about Korean Air dropping shinramyeon. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
cup ramyeon, I think, from their menu. And I remember one comment was like, "Oh, just like stop ordering it. It smells so bad. Like I'm so sick of the smell. I don't want to smell it on my flight." I recognize you can smell it on the flight, but this person was so passionately against it, and it like really bothered them to the point of it made me realize I think Koreans comment on smell and are aware of smell a lot more than I was. So
I think that feeling of being uncomfortable about something, I think it's become too extreme. And it's one of the things where if you just decide that it's not bothering you, it just wouldn't. But if you do, it does, right?
yeah,
I don't think I don't know, like for some reason bringing food to a movie theater became like a thing where you have to be very careful about whether it's going to smell or not.
yeah.
I think Korean society could like sort of like loosen up a bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think people just want to be bothered sometimes.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
almost feel like.
I would have to agree with that, Jane.
Yeah.
I feel like there is a conflict here, though, because I think a lot of times Koreans would say, oh, collectively, you should be mindful of others' experience, and so you shouldn't bring something that's very smelly, right? Or you shouldn't do something that's going to smell up the, air, the plane cabin with shinramyeon namse, smell, whatever.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that too is it's like you don't like it because it's your individual preference to not like it. So it's almost like you need to be mindful of my individual preferences rather than I need to be mindful of your individual preferences. At least that's my feeling. There's this conflict between, like, it's not purely collectivist, right?
I think it is still collectivist in a way that because the norm of what we define the collective balanced state
Oh, interesting.
is
Yeah.
more like no smell now. And so I think when people get bothered, it's
okay.
like why are you disturbing this harmony
I
that
see.
we created, like a collective consensus of like what a plane should smell like.
That part was missing to me.
Yeah.
So the collective conclusion or norm of what's acceptable now is no smell anywhere.
I think so.
Oh,
It
okay.
became a thing. Or it like should smell good everywhere.
I see.
Yeah.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
But if collectively we decided it's okay for a little smell,
Yeah.
then I think it would just be this conflict of, well, my individual preference versus yours.
Yeah.
right? So I see. But that's the big missing piece.
We'll get into
Collectively-
this theme of collective harmony and balance today's episode, which has nothing to do with smell
No.
or 수능 or bowling.
Okay, this is a very long intro, but let's move on to the main course, June. Okay, so for today's episode, we're going to do a media review. And I think unofficially, we didn't discuss this before, but I'd say this is kicking off our series of reading and watching and reviewing very famous Korean movies over the last few decades. You know, those big movies that stand out like Titanic or Star Wars or things like that in American culture. As to, you know, every Korean would know this movie. It's probably referenced a lot. And so, yeah, today we were going to review Lady Vengeance.
Or in Korean, 친절한 금자씨.
Yes. Which is the final movie in, is it Park? I'll just say it how an American would say it.
Yeah.
Park Chan-wook Park.
Yeah.
Who is the very famous director of Old Boy.
Yes.
I think is when most people had heard of him in America. Or, sorry, in the Korean American circle, I should say. And yeah, he's a very famous film director. And this is the unofficial conclusion to his 3-part trilogy. That's repetitive, redundant, but the Vengeance trilogy.
Yes.
It's called.
Yeah.
Of which Old Boy is not the first, it's the middle.
Yeah, it's the
I
second.
didn't realize that.
Yeah. I think there was a phase where he was really exploring this theme of revenge and vengeance.
Yeah.
And I don't think, you said it's unofficial, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was true or not.
Oh, if
whether
it's
he
official.
wanted it to be a trilogy. It doesn't feel like a trilogy in Korean because the titles are so different.
Okay.
Whereas in like the international titles are more depicting it as a trilogy.
Yes, because the first film is called something Lady Vengeance.
Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance.
Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. And then this third one is called Lady Vengeance. Yeah.
I think it's also called Sympathy for
Lady Vengeance?
Lady Vengeance.
I think it's just Lady Vengeance as far
Really?
as I've seen. Yeah.
Okay. And then the second one is Old Boy.
But that is the very that's completely nothing.
But in Korean, the first one is called 복수는 나의 것.
Okay.
And then Old Boy.
Uh-huh.
And then 친절한 금자씨. So I think title-wise, it doesn't really register that it's a trilogy.
Yeah, because the second one, it's an English title. The other two are Korean.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it does, like, in certain scenes, like snippets of the lines or whatever, it like loosely references the other story.
And I
like
believe
not the other story per se, but like the lines that comes up in the other movies.
And I do believe there is overlap with the actors and actresses. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is true with all of his movies, kind of.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And like all of Korean cinema in general.
That's true. Okay. But where do I want to go with this?
But I also wanted to mention that it also, like, us deciding to review this movie stemmed from a request in our Discord channel. In our Discord channel,
Yes.
this person, I think their ID is Yuhyun.
Yeah.
Yuhyun. Brought this topic of revenge in Korean society.
Yeah.
And I think he was saying that it is disproportionately highlighted in society and is depicted in Korean media a lot.
Yeah.
And he wanted us to talk about this.
Yes. And
Yes.
it spawned a good discussion on revenge. They actually had brought up another patron, I think, brought up 2 dramas that I since watched because they brought it up, which was Reborn Rich or
재벌집 막내 아들.
in Korean. And another one was Marry My Husband. I think the Korean name's pretty similar, like
I actually don't know this.
내 남편이 결혼해. So it's like basically
okay.
a perfect translation as being other revenge-driven plots in K-dramas. And it is like we'll get into it more later. I feel like revenge is a very, I guess, basic humanistic like desire.
Yeah.
So there's nothing I think particularly or uniquely Korean about that core desire of revenge. But I do think the way it plays out, it's a little bit more, I don't know what I would say, more extreme, more calculating, more like a very long, well thought out driven revenge theme and sequence. That's at least one of my feelings. So yeah, just exploring how revenge dramas or movies are depicted in Korean media. I think contrasting that to Western media a little bit will be interesting.
I think we're very aligned in this topic and how we think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I also thought that revenge is a very primitive human desire that is very universal in humanity in general. So there's nothing special about that in Korea, but the way that it's executed, the way that it's depicted, like the reason why they're executing the revenge is depicted very differently in Korean media versus the US. So I think, that's a good point that we should highlight.
Cool.
And I also wanted to mention when you were referring to other media or dramas, the most popular one in the theme of revenge was this drama called The Glory.
Oh, yes. Very recently popular.
Like this movie, Lady Vengeance, had a very similar feeling to me in that it's very calculative. This person has thought this out for a very long time. It's very,
I agree. Those have
orchestrated in a very,
patient way.
Delicate way.
Okay. Wait, we'll get into this later, I think, more. But first, June, we should give a qualifier. This movie was released in 2005. So I think the statute of limitations on spoilers is over. But still, we will be giving light spoilers throughout this episode. Again, with all media reviews, we want to qualify this is not reviewing the film itself. We're not movie critics, but we're using the movie as a way to explore.
Not even close.
June, I feel like you always have high taste. I don't, but
it's all relative.
Okay. But yeah, we will not be reviewing the movie itself per se, but just using it as a launch pad to discuss themes and just things that stood out from an American viewer's perspective and getting your Korean perspective take on it.
Yes.
So, okay, having said that, very briefly, this movie follows the main character, who is Lee Kum-ja, and she is arrested at age 20 for the kidnap and murder of I think 5 or 6-year-old boy. And she serves 13-year term from 1991 to 2004 in the movie.
Oh, wow.
I was taking notes while watching, June. And that's where my notes end. And once she's released, it turns out you learn a lot more about her. Basically, that she did not murder and kidnap this 5 or 6-year-old boy. But she was covering up for someone who... Okay.
Who planned the initial kidnap together.
Yes, who planned it together initially. But basically, she had become pregnant at age 20 or 19 or whatever. And she went to this older former teacher of hers to kind of stay with and I guess be with, right? But yeah, so over the course of the movie, you learn a lot about the main character, how she has basically, for the entire 13 years, been cultivating relationships with other inmates so that when she got out, they could help her enact revenge on this man who basically, as you find out, forced her to take the fall and take the blame for what he had done, which is kidnap and murder this boy, because he threatened her daughter's life. Basically said, if you don't take the fall for this, I'm going to, I don't know, kidnap or kill your 6-year-old daughter.
So she very effectively describes, it's in the line of the movie, says that a kidnapper kidnapped the other kidnapper's child or something.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm not sure, is that old former teacher that person?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, it's the same person. Okay.
And then ultimately it's a revenge, as we've been talking about, it's a revenge story. So when she is about to enact her revenge on this, again, person who forced her to take the fall for him, she discovers it's not just this one boy that he's murdered, but there's 4 other, I believe, children that he also kidnapped and murdered. And so she actually gets all of their family and relatives to enact revenge together, collectively. And I think that's kind of the big cardinal scene in the movie.
Yes.
Which is, the families of 5 children who died basically and were kidnapped and murdered as kids. 13 years later, the families finally have a chance to get their own revenge. And yeah, as we'll talk about, it's not so black and white or cut and dry that revenge is good or restorative or anything. I think they all do enact revenge, but it's the film depicts it as a very complex thing where, okay, is this actually better? Who's this for? What's it serving? What's the purpose? I think a lot of times when there's revenge, it's a sense of closure and fulfillment and karmic justice. But in this case, I think the film very accurately portrays this as a complicated thing when you get revenge. Okay, is it actually a net gain or what was it for? So anyway, I think that's a very quick synopsis of the film. Anything I miss?
No, I don't. I think you effectively covered everything.
Okay.
I think the story is pretty straightforward and simple.
Yeah.
It's the cinematography, the way that he depicts every scene. It almost feels like a very avant-garde advertisement for every scene.
Yeah, it's very artistically done.
Yeah.
And
I think he's very famous for that.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah, the plot is pretty straightforward, which is nice. Yeah. Okay. So Jun, I wanted to first go over maybe some very initial questions I have and cultural callouts I observed that we can go into.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to explore the themes and get into what we talked about earlier.
Yes.
Basically, Korean versus American perceptions and views on revenge, redemption, justice, etc. Cool. All right, so took some notes. Let me go through them in turn. Okay. There's a scene where when she first basically captures the main antagonist, the main bad guy in the movie, she goes crazy cutting his hair.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a thing? Like, I was waiting for them to explore why she was doing it. Oh, like maybe he did it to her, or maybe he did it to his victims, and she was like retributing it to him. But that never came up. And so this stood out to me as, why is she cutting his hair so frantically? And so I don't know if there's anything more to that in Korean society, but
I don't think it's a typical thing that you do in Korean society, but the way that I understood it is that she wanted to damage his body in a very primitive way, but without trying to kill him, because she had like a larger picture of how she wants to get it done. Yeah.
Okay, so this was just like a release of her desire to disfigure him or whatever, but in a way that's not actually damaging to his body yet.
That's how I understood it.
Okay.
But I think cutting your hair has some sort of there's a nuanced stigma towards cutting hair in Korea. Because you know that typical thing that you do in Korean protests is you do the sakbal식. Like you
shave your hair.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's like a protest of like, it's kind of like I'm gonna damage myself, kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is in though. Yeah.
That was my read as well. I wanted to run it by you. It felt like she was trying to strip him of his dignity almost, rather than necessarily inflict pain, right? Physical pain. It's just like, cutting your hair in this very haphazard, crazy, ragged way.
Yeah.
It's like stripping you of your dignity first.
I think so.
Okay. That's interesting, right? So
it is. It is a sign of your dignity, but I don't know why that is.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? I don't think that applies in Western society. As it's funny, we started talking about hair in this episode, right? I feel like hair in the U.S. is maybe a form of creative expression or creative, this is who I am, like very individualistic thing. Whereas in Korea, it carries more symbolism, I feel like. I'm cutting my hair before you go to the military. I have to get a crew cut.
Yeah.
And like you said, you cut your hair in protest. Yeah, I don't know.
I think I think historically, the way that you do your hair had a lot to do with what your social status is. Like there was a very typical thing that you do, like the style of your hair that you have to do when like you're young, and then when you get married versus like whatever, like when you go to a special social status.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of, it continued on to modern society where the way that you do your hair has something to do with like who you are, kind of.
That resonates with me. I don't think I brought this up before, even though I wanted to. When Korean women get married, or sorry, when Korean women start having kids, I think it's always funny to me because immediately they go into what I would call like a ajumma perm. They cut their hair short and they perm it.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I want it to be convenient and simple. I don't have time to invest into my hair. And then I don't want things to get caught in it. I don't want my kids to grab it, everything. So it's almost like we should have a woman for this, but it almost feels like an expression of, hey, I'm done with that phase of my life.
Yeah.
Now it's on to more practical hairstyles and things like that. And it's about child rearing.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, that's
And when you become a 할머니, they have like this very tight perm.
the curls.
Yeah. I think it has to do with, it's related to both the utilitarianism and also the collectivism thing. There's like a certain look that you have to do when you are at a certain age.
Yeah.
There's always this stigma in Korean society of like, oh, like you're not acting like your age or you don't look like your age kind of. So there's like this societal pressure that you have to look a certain way if you're at a certain stage of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That does resonate with me. Yeah. And it always did not shock me. That's the wrong word. I always found it a bit comical almost.
Yeah.
That it's like every single, it just feels like, at least, again, I know there are exceptions, but every single Korean woman, once they become a mom, they have to transition into this phase of hair and life. Yeah. But it does make some sense.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention the utilitarian aspect of this is that I think having long hair in general is not convenient when you have a lot of things to do in like your daily life, your household. Like maybe you're, taking care of your child or whatever. Having shorter hair means like you have more time to do other things than drying your hair, like making it look good.
I think that's true. Long hair is just more maintenance, right?
Yeah.
By the way, I forgot to ask this earlier too. Jun, have you ever had a perm?
No, I haven't. Isn't that interesting? I think I'm very rare occasion where, even as a man, I've never had I had this hairstyle for like forever. Yeah.
But okay, to just finish that thought then, getting your hair permed as a man is not like a thing you do once you become an ajashi, right? Is that a thing? There's no correlation at all.
It's more of it's more of the opposite almost.
I see.
Like it's a signal of like I take care of myself or like I groom myself or whatever.
I see. I think that perception's a bit different. Yeah. My perception as an American when I see people with hair perms, it seems like it's a symbol of being old.
Oh, why is that?
I don't know.
Oh, because like hair loss and you want your hair, like the volume to look bigger.
No, honestly, the reason I think I feel this way is that getting your hair permed as a man feels a bit, what's the right word? Like unmanly in a sense too. And it's also like,
so it's like
it just seems like an old thing to do. I don't know why.
It's like giving up on my masculinity.
No, it's not that. It's more like I need to try extra hard to seem stylish and fashionable, so I'm gonna get my hair permed. Whereas when you're younger, it's like, no, I'm like youthful coolness and exuberance. Like I don't need to do anything, or I don't know. It just seems kind of a nerdy thing to do, and therefore it seems like an old thing to do.
Yeah, I think Americans should get over with like trying to be obsessed with masculinity.
So not masculinity, actually. I think it's more coolness. Like it just doesn't seem like a cool thing to do, right? It's
Not caring about coolness is the most masculine thing that you can
do. Maybe you're right. You're right. Yeah. Anyway, Jun, I am surprised still I've gotten the perm. And that's maybe driving some of my self-consciousness about it. But anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so cutting the hair. Again, this is just a comment, no cultural thing, but there was only one moment in the whole film I found funny. Did you find any scenes funny, by the way?
There is a very iconic scene that everyone, if you mention this movie, 친절한 금자씨, to a Korean, they would all know this one scene. That is a very iconic scene.
Okay,
but it is very culturally and Korean language nuanced that I didn't think it would have been a very special scene for you.
Okay.
It actually comes up in the very first scene where
Yeah.
she gets out of jail and she's greeted by, I think it's like a church group.
It's a pastor.
Yeah. And then the pastor gives tofu to her, which I will get
We'll get
in a
into
bit
that later.
But then she drops the tubu from the
Yeah.
plate.
She like flips it over.
Yeah,
so
the
it falls
tubu
on
like
the ground.
smashes on the ground. And then this very iconic line where she says, "너나 잘하세요."
Oh.
It's a very iconic scene in the movie.
Yeah, that line did not register to me.
Because number one, it is a signal of she is a different person now.
Yeah.
In the movie, it comes over and over again of like, oh, you've changed. It's like that moment where it depicts her demeanor is very different from before. And so I had to turn on the English subtitles for this scene because I wanted to know how they translated.
Yeah.
And in Netflix, at least, they translated as "go screw yourself."
Yeah. I think they use a more expletive word.
But
Yeah.
it is very like "너나 잘하세요" is very nuanced in Korean language because it's very ironically combining 반말 and 존댓말.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, 너 is already a
반말.
반말, and then 잘하세요 is a 존댓말 in a very ironic way, almost.
Yeah.
Like 너나 잘하세요, it's more like go mind your own business kind of.
Yeah.
In my interpretation.
Yeah.
But like the way that she said it and that line was so impactful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, that was again all lost on me. So it is. Yeah, I think the contrast between the informal speech and formal speech in that line, combined with the whole scene, right? She's turning down this tofu, which is like a redemptive thing, which we'll get into later. But you're saying that was like a very hard hitting line that stood out for Koreans.
Yeah,
Totally
very
lost on me.
very impactful.
Okay. The one scene I laughed at in this very serious, dark movie was at the very end. Again, all the families of the deceased children, the victims, their families are getting ready to basically enact physical violence onto this bad guy. And the one guy just has like a stick, like a metal baton.
Yeah.
And one of the guys is like, the guy that's going before him was like, hey, like, you want my knife, right? Like, why do you just have a metal stick?
Oh yeah. And then he combined it with the axe.
And then he like pulls out the rest of the weapon, which is the baton, turns into this massive battle axe.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious. That was the only scene I laughed at in the movie.
Yeah.
And then, okay, the other thing, I don't think this is anything interesting. I think it doesn't carry much nuance. But again, the final person who was enacting revenge, she lost her grandson, I believe, she lost one of her grandchildren, and also eventually her actual child because they committed, they unalived themselves after they had lost their own kid. But anyway, she basically does the final deed, finishes them off with children's scissors. I thought that was very, again, on the nose, nothing subtle about it. But I was like, dang, that is meaningful. I mean, that hits hard. So she basically had, finished off the bad guy with blunt children's scissors.
But by the way, is unalived a term that you use in the States?
I have now learned that is a term you use because
it's kind of like the Korean version or American version of 극단적 선택.
Yes,
yeah.
Well, what does that translate to again in Korean?
Extreme decision.
Extreme decision.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's because other words might be trigger words. And
Interesting.
anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. At the very end of the movie, again, they've done this very violent act, and then they're all sitting around the circle eating cake, and it gets more into the practical matters, and so they all are like, basically, hey, so the bad guy had coerced us into giving money as a ransom to get our kid back. Are we going to get that money back? Basically, the ransom money we gave. Yeah. And they all gave him the bank accounts to wire transfer the money. I don't know if there's anything that you thought was worth calling out here, but I wanted to just talk about that scene to see if there was anything interesting that stood out.
It's very kind of like black humor, right? In a way that they just executed on this very iconic, almost traumatic, but also cathartic act.
Yeah.
But then they like quickly go back to reality of like, how are we going to get this money? And it becomes like such a menial and then utilitarian thing.
Yeah.
Of like giving, like how it actually is going to play out in real life, kind of like
I see.
they eventually have to have this scene where this moment where you give out the 계좌번호, the bank account. I mean, that was kind of like, oh, this is kind of a reality thing. Like, if this actually happens in reality, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Kind of like pulling that moment of almost like a surreal moment of acting on this revenge
Yeah.
to reality.
Yeah, I see. So that part I understood. First of all, I want to get it out of the way. Exchanging bank account information so you can wire transfer money back in, that's super common. There's nothing weird about that in Korean society. I think exchanging bank account info to, again, pay people back through wire transfer, that's very normal.
But they don't do that in the US, right?
No, exactly. In
Yeah.
Korean society, that's very normal. In the US, that'd be a little bit weird. But the part I wanted to get at was the last thing that I was thinking was, okay, as part of, I guess, wrapping this up, you should return the money that was given to this person. I don't know, that just seemed like, that didn't register for me at all. Like, how would she even get access to the bank account? Like, it just seems so impractical to me. So I don't know, that part, if this type of story were to play out in the US, I don't think anyone would assume that that money should be returned. I don't know. That,
interesting.
Yeah, that the whole part about money in that scene. Again, there was a scene in the movie June where all the relatives of the deceased kids, the victims, they were talking about why does he even need the money? He doesn't have any kids, right? And then she was like, oh well, he wanted to buy a yacht for himself.
Yeah.
That whole conversation would have maybe felt a bit weird too, right? Like the Koreans were only assuming that he needed money for his kid. Right? Whereas, like, I don't know, that's just not an assumption Americans would make. Like, of course he wants the money to buy nice things or live a good life or buy a yacht. But that seemed to hit hard for Koreans, where it's, oh, even the money he was getting is selfish. I don't know. In America, you just assume it was.
I think, well, the way that I understood it is that the director or the writer of this story wanted to justify the revenge of depicting this person as pure evil.
I see.
And even the motives of doing this is so, like, I think he wanted to give zero to none empathy towards this person. And that's why they put in that scene, I think.
Yeah, I just have to say, right, that would have been unnecessary in America in a sense. Okay, of course, if you wanted the money for a good reason, my parent has cancer, my kid needs it, whatever, that could have given him some empathy. But even in the absence of that, there's not, of course he wants money for a selfish reason. I don't know. Anyway, that is something that probably hits harder, I think, for a Korean audience than a Western audience.
But that is interesting that you know, the part that I thought was interesting about your insights is that I've never thought about the technicalities of how can she even access his bank account to get that money. That part is kind of interesting. I've never thought of.
It just seems so like, why are they focusing on this? And I get it. That's that very sharp contrast from committing this crazy violent act to just settling practical matters. But as a part of that 정리, just like settling things up, that money thing would not have jumped out to me. But they made it a big point in the movie to talk about it. So I wanted to bring it up.
But I think it's kind of symbolic to trying to rebalance things back to how it was before it was being done.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you can't have your child reincarnated or something.
Yeah.
But they wanted to undo the damage as much as possible.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So those are my very initial questions I had. Let's get into some of the cultural nuances, let's say.
Okay.
I think leading off with a very obvious one, tofu.
Yeah.
So again, as soon you already talked about the scene, but as soon as she gets out of her 13-year prison term, this pastor who had kind of been, taking credit for her turnaround in prison, gives her tofu to eat on a plate, and all the other prisoners being released at the same time, they're all eating tofu. So yeah, obviously this is a very Korean thing. I think the director had, this movie came out after Old Boy, and so he had already seen a lot of international success. So I believe the director may have already been wanting to depict and explain why they're eating tofu very clearly, even though that would have been unnecessary if the audience was only Korean.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you watch the movie, they talk about it. But Jun, maybe you could explain even more about the tofu after prison.
Yeah. It is a very symbolic thing that you do after you get right out of prison, and especially on the site. Like if someone comes to greet you in front of the prison, that's what they bring. I don't know if it's a thing that like I don't know if it's one of those things that you only do in dramas and never happen in real life, because I've never seen that scene in person before, but it gets depicted a lot in Korean media.
Yeah.
And I think it has to do with the way that tofu looks and tastes like. It's very white and pure, and it's if you put it into a food, it almost sort of makes whatever tastes a bit bland.
Yeah.
Because the taste of tofu itself is very bland, and almost kind of soaks up the flavors, right?
Yeah.
To make it more bland. And I think it's a kind of like a symbolic way of like cleansing yourself almost from the faults
Yeah.
that you've done,
Very
or the
interesting.
sins that you did.
Yeah.
Kind of like if you eat tofu, it'll cleanse yourself.
Yeah.
Almost.
It
Yeah.
shouldn't taste too good, right? Because you're still coming out of prison. You did
Yeah.
something bad to be in prison. So in a sense, I want to get into this too, right? Because at the very last scene of the movie, it's obviously very parallel, right? She turned down the tofu, but she eats this white cake, right? And not only eats it, she devours it.
Yeah.
Like she's so hungry for this redemptive feeling and like turning her life around.
Yeah.
But anyway, like
Oh,
where am I getting at?
you know what it feels like? It's almost like baptism. Like you drench yourself in water, clean yourself,
Yeah.
and like sort of giving, like almost like giving up your life to the Lord, almost,
Oh, so eating tofu
or like
is-
surrendering yourself to the Lord.
Wait, so eating tofu is supposed to be like that?
It's kind of like a symbolic act of like,
okay.
oh, I'm gonna regain my pureness,
Yeah.
kind of. Yeah.
Okay. But very intentionally, it's not supposed to taste good, right?
I mean, sometimes tofu tastes good
No.
eaten that way.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think that's the intention though.
You don't think that's the intention?
No.
Okay. So you think the blandness and lack of flavor, like I was gonna say, no one enjoys just eating raw tofu. It's more symbolic in nature, and it's picked because it's not tasty.
Yeah, but the taste, the meaning of it tasting bad isn't a thing, because some people just do it too.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna contrast this again to the last scene where eating cake is much more enjoyable, and in a sense, at that point, she's not ready to give up and turn her life around. Let's say, stop being a sinner. In the movie, they call it at first because she needs to get her revenge, but once that's behind her, then she's finally ready to accept it. And I would say it now tastes sweet, that redemption, rather than kind of bland and or bitter like it did in the first
like
scene.
sweet revenge kind of.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe that has to do something with that.
I was also going to bring up this really. So in the Jewish tradition, June, during Seder, I believe, and I've experienced one kind of official Seder before, which was very fun. But I think they always contrast the bitter food with the sweet food. Like that's the whole spirit of it, which is it's very symbolic. They eat very bitter food. It's not supposed to taste good, but you eat it to remind yourself of the pain, of the suffering, right? But then afterward, you contrast it with something sweet because now that's done and now you're moving forward.
Oh, interesting.
So this whole contrast between turning down the tofu at the beginning and then devouring and stuffing her face with the sweet cake at the end, it gave me very Jewish vibes too.
I don't know if we want to get into this now, but I think not only the tofu itself, but who gave it to her is also interesting.
Yes.
Followed by her iconic line, "너나 잘하세요."
Yeah.
I think it plays into like Christian values versus like Korean values, and like how it was more of a personal thing,
Yeah.
right? Before she realized that there are more victims. I think in Western society, like revenge is almost taught or learned to be not a good thing, right? Like forgive your enemy kind of thing. And so I think that line coming from a pastor is kind of symbolic of like, oh, like the Christian values of like you shouldn't do revenge.
Yeah.
And then she's like,
She
kind of
turns
like,
that
go
down.
screw
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah. I think that is a very common theme that is portrayed throughout the movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think this could be a good segue of us trying to interpret this in two different cultural
In a
values.
thematic way.
Yeah.
I did have a couple things I wanted to
Oh
get
yeah.
to first.
I was afraid.
Sorry. Okay, really quick. Again, I've now seen a couple prison scenes before. There's another K-drama I've finished, which is Prison Playbook. Basically, entirely takes place inside a prison. But yeah, this whole six to a cell thing, that's very foreign, I think, for Western viewers to see. Just six people, all criminals, in a cell together. This is going to end poorly, right? There's no way this ends well. But in Korea, this is the norm, right? So just wanted to talk about that briefly.
I actually cannot talk about prison norms in general, but I do I do think a communal room is a norm.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's true, but
Yeah.
I heard that it's intentional.
Yeah.
I mean, going to prison in a way is that like you're educated of the way that you could fit back into society
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
I think the official term of prison in Korea is a 교화소, which I think means like learning harmony.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the reason.
Yeah, having a more communal room,
Yeah.
you need to learn to live with others
Yeah.
properly. It's interesting.
Yeah.
If Korean prisons were just two to a cell, what's your response to that? It's like, oh, is that worse or better? Like, how does that contrast to thinking of people having six to a room?
Interesting. I think a twosome and a group thing is very different, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just like
Totally.
me against the other person versus like trying to fit into a communal order is kind of different.
Yeah. I mean,
Two to a cell is the norm in the US.
yeah. Does that feel particularly cruel to you, or do you think better or worse things will happen when there's two to a cell versus six in a cell?
That's an interesting question. Personally, two to a cell would be better. But
In
what
your
if that
mind,
person
yeah.
is horrible?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what American prisons are depicted as.
It's almost like a lottery.
Yeah, who you get.
Yeah.
I mean, six is as well, but, lower variants, let's say there's more people to be in there.
Yeah.
I guess in my mind, when I first think of six in a cell, though, it's like this is going to end very poorly because it's so much easier, I feel like, for there to be bullying. But actually, when I stop to think about it, two to a cell might be even more extreme in that way, right? Like literally whoever's stronger is going to be at an advantage.
Yeah.
Where with six, there's some like safety in numbers. Like maybe the three weaker ones can rally a bit. And
Yeah.
Anyway, the communal nature even of prisons always stands out to me every time they depict it. Yeah. But I really like that idea of, hey, if you want to integrate back into society, you got to learn to live with others and try to be at harmony. Yeah. Jun, there was one line I was just very proud of myself. Even in the Korean, it says something like, prayer is like an Italy towel that you cleanse yourself with.
Yeah.
I now know that reference thanks to this podcast. Anyway, just something I was very proud of. Okay, the final question before we move on. One of the inmates, again, and this was I think, all-female prison, it said she was in prison for adultery. Is adultery a crime in Korea? Is this... That just struck me as very odd. Like, how can adultery be a crime?
It was for a very long time. It just became not a crime pretty recently.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And again, this may be the case in America. I just am ignorant. But yeah, that's interesting. So adultery officially was a crime. Was it just for the woman or for both?
For both.
For both.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you committed adultery, you could go to prison.
Yes.
That's crazy. Okay.
Wasn't that weird?
That's wild. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, what? I thought it had been a mistranslation. But yeah, okay. Interesting. All right. Now, Jun, I think we can transition to let's explore some themes. Primarily, revenge, justice, things like that. So as you had said earlier, the biggest one here is, I think, an individualistic view of revenge. Like, this is me and mine to carry out in an act and whatever, versus the more communal nature and that's depicted in Lady Vengeance. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe we'll start with that.
Yeah, and I think the director might have been very intentional about this, that it is a very different way of understanding and executing on revenge that is pretty Korean.
Yeah.
or like more Asian, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he put that first scene of the pastor giving tofu.
Yeah.
And then she's like, go screw yourself, kind
Yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah.
It's like the revenge that I'm going to act on from now is going to be very different from how you understand revenge, kind of.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you see revenge scenes or revenge themed movies in the US,
Yeah.
several movies come to mind, like the Liam Neeson thing.
Oh, Taken. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
That thing,
John Wick.
John Wick, Kill Bill, and
Kill
all that.
Bill.
It always
Gladiator.
portrays Gladiator. Yeah, it's very highly personal,
Yeah.
and it's sort of like a lone hero thing. Like,
Yeah.
this is my own business.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
take
yeah.
care of this.
Uh-huh.
It has less implication of like systemic wrong or like a higher institution.
Yeah.
It's more of like a like solo thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which was the case for Lee Geum-ja in this movie too.
At first.
But it becomes a communal thing. Whereas, yeah, in Korea, I think it always ties back to like systemic injustice and a higher institutional thing that is doing wrong to themselves.
Oh, what was the systemic thing that she was trying to enact justice on in this movie?
Not in this movie particularly, but I wanted to depict the communal value of communal aspect of the revenge, right? It always ties back to the Shinramyeon thing.
Yeah.
Like a communal understanding or a consensus of what should be a balanced state of society. And then it's more like revenge becomes a way to restore the balance, kind of.
Yeah.
So it's always a communal thing. And like it's always the revenge is justified by the way that, oh, this was a wrongdoing in breaking the balance of what should be a harmonic state of the communal. Yeah.
No, I mean, that, just to respond to that, we talked about Reborn Rich earlier. That one very clearly is portraying the systemic revenge is rich versus poor, right? Basically, are you born into a rich family versus born into a poor family? And going through that life in one mode or the other, same time span, but depending on what you were born into, your life is completely different. And, you know, that one's interesting too, because that also has reincarnation is Buddhist, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So, I mean, clearly he was reborn, right?
Yeah.
It's like the theme of reincarnation is very clear in that movie. In that drama. And then the other one we were talking about, like Marry My Husband, also like literally she's reborn. So this theme of reincarnation and then enacting revenge, that was a theme in very popular dramas recently. I bring it up because in Marry My Husband in particular, the lead very quickly realizes there's some karma and balance in the universe, in that whatever happened in the first timeline is going to happen in the second timeline as well, but maybe not to her. So if someone has cancer in the first timeline, someone else has to have cancer in the second timeline. If someone's going to die in the first timeline, someone's going to die again in the second timeline. So anyway, this theme of both karma, reincarnation, and justice against some system, in a sense. Yeah, those are all very prevalent in Korean revenge media, whereas it's not, I'd say, as prevalent in Western. Yeah.
Oh, I just realized that there is a level of institutional injustice in this movie too, because the detective who was supposed to protect or like investigate this thoroughly had something to do with this overall scheme.
Yes. Yeah,
so that I think is depicting the institutional injustice.
Which is, she was falsely imprisoned.
Yeah.
And then she even tells that detective, right?
The detective knew, right?
Yeah, the detective knew she didn't do it. And then there was one line in the movie where she goes to him and says, hey, if you had done your job, these other kids might not have also died. But because I took the fall, you let me take the fall. All these other victims, basically the real criminal, the real perpetrator could keep on doing what they were doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that definitely came up. Yeah, to your point, you know, you named some of the very popular revenge movies in American culture.
Yeah.
There was one more I just had to add. I don't know why. This Jennifer Lopez revenge movie called Enough.
No, I've
very
never heard of this.
Similar to Glory, but I don't know why, but that movie, I don't think it's very well acclaimed or popular. But I had watched it at one point, and I just remember loving it.
Oh,
I
really?
think it was on a flight.
So it was kind of like The Glory?
Yeah, basically, you know, badass female, like, gets abused physically, whatever, and then she trains and becomes like a trained assassin killer, and then next physical revenge in the end. So I don't know why, but I remember loving that movie.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear, I think I've watched a bunch of Korean media as well that has this very simple action oriented revenge, especially with like the badass female lead. So the ones that come to mind just from the past year were My Name, Ballerina, and Kill Boksun. Again, these all have Korean names that I'm not aware of, but yeah. So this very carnal, like reenacting physical violence, it primarily being action driven and fun to watch, right? These exist in Korean media as well. But yeah, this Lady Vengeance one, it wasn't that type of revenge movie, right? It's much more like psychological, like, hey, is this right or wrong? It's blurring the lines of right and wrong. And so to that, and two movies came to mind that this gave me similar vibes. One was Gone Girl, which is like very complicated, like you don't know who's right, who's wrong, and kind of like very, like, again, psychologically demanding, let's say. And then the other was Saw 2.
Oh, Saw.
So Saw, that whole movie series, it's about like presenting you with very, carnal physical violence, but with like a very unclear like moral line of like what's right or wrong, right? So yeah, I think this gave me those vibes as well.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Saw is one of the movie titles that is directly used in Korean when it released in Korean, but it's one of those words that when you write it, when you Koreanify it, it sounds so different. So for our Korean audience, I just wanted to mention, when you say Saw, it means the movie Soul.
Soul.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In A Lady Vengeance, it also, highlights that blurred line between, getting back justice versus cruelty.
Yeah. Exactly.
Especially when it comes to the last scene where they do like the communal revenge thing.
Yeah.
It almost feels like they're the murderers.
Yes.
I mean, they are
Yeah.
literally, but it kind of feels wrong too. And
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Because we already talked about the director went to such great lengths so that the audience has zero sympathy or empathy for the bad guy. And yet at the same time, it did feel wrong, right? In a sense, like they are really almost being extra cruel and enacting physical violence. And is this right?
Yeah.
Even though you have no empathy or sympathy for the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting.
I think it was very clever that he wanted to have he kind of isolated the situation of like zero empathy, and it's just like doing justice versus cruelty. Like I think the message that he wanted to give might be doing justice isn't always a good thing. It could come with cruelty.
Yeah. Are you inflicting more harm on yourself?
Yeah.
Because I think what the director really depicted was maybe going into the room before they could enact violence on the bad guy. They were a little bit unclear about themselves.
Yeah.
Once they were in the room, they all enacted physical violence on this guy. But then coming out of it, it went back to that mode of like, oh, what did I just do? And they were clearly shooken up by it, right? So yeah, they made that very clear that it's complex. It's not obviously good or bad.
Now that you say it, this theme of, doing the right thing isn't always doing the right thing, and it sometimes is, coupled with cruelty almost.
Yeah.
It kind of ties back to the bigger theme of the movie, I think, especially in the context of Korean society, where there is, I think revenge is a lot of times depicted in the way that it has to do with like distrusting the institutional justice as it was in The Glory, right? The institution was a school.
Bullying, teachers,
And
hierarchy.
I think in particular in Korean society, if you look at the history of modern Korea, I think there could be some collective trauma of institutions because like economic growth was such a priority throughout the years. A lot of individuals might have felt left out of that justice system actually working properly. And so personal revenge I think that's why in Korean media is a very popular theme.
Yeah.
And that's why it ties back to the institutional injustice kind of thing. If the institution cannot protect me from doing wrong, I will do it myself.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. I want to add by why I linked justice not always being a good thing is because in a flipped way, throughout the growth of Korean society, like the right thing was economic growth.
Yeah.
And the right thing wasn't always morally right thing.
Yeah,
and
I see.
in that process, a lot of individual might have felt unjust. Yeah.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
I think this is the perfect segue to this final conclusion piece, I think. Oh, so, the question that was originally posed that led us to this episode is the theme of revenge, more extreme or more present in, let's say, Korean media than American media. And I think two things come out that make me think that might be true. And you just said them, but I'll repeat. One is the collectivism versus individualism, right? Revenge is a very individualistic thing at its core, if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
I was wronged, I'm going to get back at you.
Yeah.
Whereas a collectivist society and mentality is, okay, what was right for the group?
Yeah.
And like you said, in Korea's past, maybe the right thing for the group was economic prosperity, so that as a country we can get richer.
Yeah.
At the cost of maybe some individuals' justice or freedoms, right? And the second thing you brought up was, in Korea, it's so hierarchical. There's always a hierarchy. And so with hierarchy comes power imbalance.
Yeah.
And that, I think, makes it such that if you're on the weaker side of the power spectrum, you can't enact revenge. It's like almost impossible in society. And so it's this even bigger fantasy to be able to, overcome the hierarchical disadvantage you have to enact that revenge. And so I think, look, those hierarchies, whether it's, physical power, especially, let's say, in Western society, like if a man is abusing a woman, right, the woman feels powerless. She wants to get back, right? Or if they're rich versus the poor, like those things exist in Western media too, don't get me wrong. But I just do think because hierarchy is so much stronger and more present in Korean society, the revenge is that much more, I think, cathartic and almost even more of a fantasy in Korean society because you just can't get away from it. Whereas, in American society, of course, there's hierarchy. It's just not so present in everyday, I think, culture that it's, anyway. Yeah. I do think there's something to Korean society that makes it that makes revenge a stronger theme.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think you mentioned a lot of these revenge-themed media is portrayed around the woman being the protagonist. I think that hierarchy, or that's also institutional order in Korea for a long time and still is a very patriarchal society. It's definitely, this movie too is definitely,
Playing into that,
hierarchical aspect of the woman and the man, right?
Yeah.
Especially when she first met this Mr. Peck. He was a teacher and she was a student.
Totally.
And that kind of like male teacher versus, female student hierarchy thing. Yeah, I think that makes it even more cathartic. I'm using a lot of
hard
words that I don't usually use in this episode.
I mean, I'm struggling too, Jun, so.
Cathartic feeling to see for Korean audience.
Yeah, that's good. Good point too, because even the way the main bad guy picked his victims, it was because he was an English hagwon teacher. Well, that's funny too. The English hagwon system catching strays here, but it's also poking at that too, right? He could be in this position where he could maybe kidnap, murder kids and get away with it.
Yeah.
Because he's the English hagwon teacher, right? He can't be that evil. Yeah.
Oh God, that scene, by the way, now that you mention it, was genius to me. The way that she put a gun to his head and he was translating for her.
Oh yeah.
For her adopted child.
Dude, I got chills. I just didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's genius.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't. Yeah, I just made that comparison.
But kind of tying back to our previous episode in the largely unpopular politics episode, when you said one of the differences that you feel between Korean and American society of how they view their government, you said that in America it's kind of the norm that citizens don't trust their government.
Yes. Yeah.
Isn't that kind of the opposite in this situation? Because when you say Korean people, if we were to say that Korean people usually feel injustice in an institutional level, why do they still trust the government? Whereas like if revenge is such an individual thing and has nothing to do with institutional wrongdoing,
Yeah.
isn't it kind of weird that they distrust the government in general? Or is it just the government or institutions in general?
So for me personally, I don't trust institutions in general because of what you were saying. It creates some sort of power imbalance, which is always ripe for corruption and things like that. But in general, I would say distrust for the institution of government may be more unique. I mean, what are other institutions, right? The police and justice system. I mean, there's a general distrust there too.
Is it because Americans almost just gave up on it and just has no expectations, versus Korean people still has that expectation, and that's why they feel that it's such a wrong thing that institutions are unjust?
I'm trying to think. So, okay, we're trying to discuss the role of individualism versus communalism from an aspect of institutions, right? Because institutions, by definition, are communal. They're something we all agree on as a group for the protection of individuals. Oh, maybe that's where it breaks down. I would define institutions as, protecting the individuals that are a part of it. But do you think a Korean person would agree with that? Or would they say institutions are to protect the whole group, the group as a whole, not any individual?
Oh, interesting. As a Korean, the first thing comes to mind is the society, like a communal thing. Like they're here to maintain the balance in community.
I see.
But there is a aspect of they are protecting me as an individual too.
Yeah.
But I think the former has a stronger feeling to me, personally at least.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'd say it's the opposite. Yeah, so the institution exists to protect me and my individual rights, freedoms, ability to live, rather than the communal nature of society as a whole. Of course, they play into each other, right? I can't exist as an individual unless there's like collective safety.
Yeah.
But anyway, just the ordering for me is actually flipped when I think about it.
Yeah.
But sorry, your original question was around, do you think it makes more or less sense that Americans distrust their government than Koreans?
It's more like if that's the norm, why aren't there other medias that are depicting this revenge towards an institutional level?
Oh, yeah, I think it's because it's gotten to the point of it's just such an accepted norm.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah. Maybe they just gave up.
We just assume that's the way it is.
They have no expectation.
But Koreans are still upset and angered by the corrupt institutions. Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting that the scene of how she designed the gun and she drew it in a Buddhist, can you say a Buddhist Bible? Anyways, like a Buddhist book, right?
Is that book famous, by the way?
I think so.
Oh, okay, I didn't recognize the title at all.
I think it goes back to, the Christian values versus more traditional Korean values almost.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
No, that was just it. It was just interesting that like they intentionally chose to put a scene where she designs the gun onto a Buddhist book. But it's almost like, now that I say that, it almost feels like they're trying to say that they're not even following the Buddhist rules either, because it's almost damaging the book by drawing it there.
I see.
Yeah.
Jun, one more thing before we end. I think there's this theme of, I don't know, Koreans placing a lot of value on the physical appearance or what's on the surface. So, the very obvious one, as you've been saying, there's that scene where she puts on red eyeshadow, right? And she's like, oh, this is like, I don't want to be seen as too nice.
친절해 보일까 봐.
Yeah, but, when the female lead who took the fall, they made it a point of saying when she first got arrested, everyone was shocked, like, oh, because she's so beautiful, I can't imagine someone so pretty doing something so evil, right? And it comes up later as well. I remember before the victims' families were going to, get revenge on the main bad lead. they were like, oh, he looked kind of normal. How could someone who looks normal do something so evil as well? I don't know if there's something there, but also Koreans have this thing historically of face reading, right? It's like you can tell a lot by someone's face, which I don't think is a thing in Western society. So, yeah, I don't know if you wanted to talk about this idea that, you know, you can tell a lot about someone by seeing what they look like or examining their face, and that not necessarily taking things at face value or on the surface, but understanding that very nice, kind looking people can be pure evil too. I don't know.
I wanted to interpret more in the way of, yeah, again, what is on the face value versus what is the reality in general. And I think this goes back to like institutional injustice too, right? I think the whole theme is playing out in the movie of like institutions or like maybe the detectives on the face value is there to protect you or society in general, but there is like an underlying reality that might not always align with what the face value is. And I think, yeah, as you described, there are multiple scenes where something might look like something, but then in reality it's something totally different. I think the first scene that you described, yeah, it's how on the media it was such a phenomena that the Iyounghae Kumjashi looks so beautiful. Like, if she looks like that, how can she do such a thing?
Yeah.
Which in reality was different. She did do that. Like, she was a part of the kidnapping anyways. And number two, depicting, like, everyone's different from the face value, I think, almost.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Depicting the English teacher, like that scene where he was like doing the dance with the children.
I don't remember that scene, yeah.
Like he was doing like sing along thing with the children. He looks so innocent and kind, which he is not. Also, that scene, I think what comes to mind is like the bad guy and his like pretended wife eating together.
Oh, yeah. That was a very jarring scene.
Yeah, like everything looks so normal and calm, but like in reality, it isn't.
Yeah. And that's true. The really bad parts were happening off screen in that scene.
Yeah.
What was being depicted was kind of normal.
And like even Iyounghae Kumjashi, like her demeanor in prison was something completely different. Was compared to what was on the surface and what was actually going through her mind. And also in the last scene where they invited all the parents of the kidnapped children, there was a scene where there was this one couple where the wife looked so naive.
Oh, yeah.
But then she was like, you can't even do this. I'll do it myself, kind of. It's like, don't be fooled by what's going on on the surface. And I think the overarching theme, it ties back to society in general. Like Korean society, to maintain this society and institutions in general, to maintain this communal harmony, they might express something that is completely different. That's what's actually happening in reality.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they were trying to get at. At least that's how I interpret it.
Do you think Korean society is more inclined to judge a book by its cover, look at the surface rather than question what's underneath, more so than Western society?
Because I think what's on the cover is the essence of the harmony that they're trying to maintain.
I see. Yeah. So in order to maintain this collective harmony on the surface, Koreans are more inclined to at least put forth some either visual representation or on the surface, make everything seem as if it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. The thing that you mentioned about the hairstyles, if women get married, they get a shorter cut and do the perm. I think that's like all on the surface. Like in reality, they might not really want to do that hairdo. Yeah, maybe I'm like reading too much into it, but
no, I don't think you are. And we haven't brought up religion yet. Maybe we won't explore it deeply, but I thought that was something interesting, which is, in Christian ideology, there's I think, very famous line, which is like, man looks at the surface, but God looks at the heart. And, one of the biggest teachings in the Bible is about hypocrisy, which actually I think the Bible would define as an outward reality that doesn't match what's inside. And like, that's the thing that is, brought up over and over and over. Don't be a hypocrite, right? That's not a thing in Buddhism, right? Or in, let's say, Korean religions or mindset at all?
I'm too
Is it as
ignorant to
much?
talk about
Yeah.
Buddhism in general.
Okay.
But I mean, being a hypocrite isn't a good thing in general, and that's a common understanding in Korea too.
Okay. I mean, I want to question that, right? Because
Yeah.
I think Confucian principles maybe even puts it on a pedestal, which is, okay, can you suppress your internal reality? Can you basically forego your individual instincts and just on the surface present something that maintains harmony? That to me would be defined as hypocrisy, but it seems almost idealized in Korean society. And again, it's not, for me, it's a bad thing because I think you should be authentic to yourself. But I can understand from a Korean cultural perspective, it's actually a good thing, right? That is an ideal.
Yeah, I think there are different degrees of understanding and defining what hypocrisy is, and there's a different bar, I guess. Like to which level is it understood as just good manners versus like what is defined as a hypocrite, right?
Yeah.
For instance, like table manners in the US, like Korean people think that's very 가식적, like it's a hypocrite.
I
Like,
see.
why do you act this way? Like when you want to, sometimes you just want to like eat food in the way that you want.
Yeah.
Like why do you have to act so
Proper,
pretentious?
yeah.
That might be seen as a hypocrite in
Hypocritical.
Korean society. So I think there's different characteristic differences and
Yeah.
also like the level. Like, but there is a higher emphasis on trying to maintain the communal harmony and balance in general.
Yeah.
And I think that always entails, some level of suppressing individualistic urges, values. Yeah.
I see. Cool. Yeah, I mean, it just, yeah. When I hear things like face reading or whatever, for me, it's like complete hocus pocus. I don't know. And I think I take it as a given that what people are presenting on the surface doesn't necessarily align with what's inside. So I just have this general distrust of that. I don't know.
I think face reading is same as MBTI.
Okay.
Because everything else is so similar.
Yeah.
It's easier for Korean people to catch the very subtle nuances.
It's true. Yeah.
Whereas
yeah.
like I think the US is a very unique setting where you have to live with people who look very, very differently from what you are. And so it's hard to catch the very subtle nuances of like facial expressions and all that. Whereas in Korea, like everything else is so similar.
Yeah.
So yeah, they tend to catch more very nuanced things, subtle things.
I don't think we've ever reached that very explicit conclusion before, even though we've danced around that on this podcast a lot.
Yeah.
Which is maybe it's easier to have nunchi in homogenous societies.
Yeah.
Because you do naturally pick up on slight variations and differences, subtle things more easily. Whereas in, America, everyone's so different by nature. It's harder to pick up on these really small, subtle, nuanced differences in whether it's a facial expression or how people look.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I think that brings us to the end of this episode. We always conclude, though, our media reviews, Jun, with we want to rate the media, in this case, Lady Vengeance, by Chan-wook Park, on a 1 to 10 scale of how we think this would have more or less appeal as a non-Korean viewer. I think that's the goal.
We did it
We've been doing this, yeah.
throughout every media reviews.
We haven't had that many. But
I remember doing this for Lovely Runner. Okay, maybe we have.
yeah, so
On
how
a
would you
scale
rate
of 1
this?
to 10, 10
Yeah.
being
1 to 10, 1 is this is much less appealing as a non-Korean, and 10 being this is much more appealing as a Korean.
I think it sits on a 6.
I was going to give it a 5.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like we said, the desire for revenge is pretty universal. But I do think there's a lot of things that make this particularly Korean. I don't know. It just feels that way to me.
Yeah. I think in a weird way, because there are a lot of Korean, very uniquely Korean things, it might gain more
more
international attraction.
But just to be clear, the scene where she involves all of the victims' families and this very communal, very systematic revenge, like that was, they were even like thinking, okay, who goes in what order? And the first person to be in the room with him was like, oh, I have to be considerate of the later people.
Yeah.
Right? That is all very communally oriented.
Isn't it so interesting though?
Yeah.
For an international audience.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Was that particularly like, did that stand out to you as like weird? Or you're like, oh, that's how you would go about enacting communal revenge?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. It felt very practical to you once you decided collectively we're all going to enact revenge on this.
Yeah, like even while you're trying to act on this very out of societal order thing, they're still trying to maintain some kind of communal rule. Is a very Korean thing.
Like that made sense to you.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was
that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah,
if it actually were to happen. Yeah.
That bordered on comical for me because it's like, oh, they're being so matter of fact and practical.
Yeah.
About this very crazy thing that's about to happen.
I mean, to be fair, the movie was depicting it as a comical thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that was true.
But it is a normal thing. Like it's kind of like satire of what, like how comical Korean society could be.
Yeah.
In trying to maintain some kind of communal order.
So you do think it was seen as maybe a bit satirical.
Yeah.
But you also think that is how it would play out if this were to happen in Korean society.
Yes.
I think. Just to give my very quick perspective on that, we should have included this earlier. But drawing straws almost for determining the order for who gets to, go in the room with this guy, that did not feel fair. I would have tried to say, okay, who had the worst experience and who deserves revenge the most.
But how can you?
I know, but that to me is more fair than drawing straws randomly. So anyway, it just seems like, but see, your response to that is, but you can't judge that. So then therefore it's not fair. But in my case, it's like we should still try to figure that out, even if it's not perfect. That's a more fair system rather than just drawing straws. It's just a definition of fairness, right? Or what's right. Is completely random? Is that even odds, right? Or is, having it be relative to how much you deserve or need revenge?
Isn't that so not individualistic though? Individually, everyone's like, them having lost their child is almost equally tragic.
To me, it's more individualistic because you're taking into account each individual situation and who deserves revenge the most. Right? And to me, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's just completely different views of individualism and fairness, right? That I think is comical. Not comical, interesting. Okay, anyway. So I think this is definitely worth watching as a non-Korean. So. Okay, that brings us to the end of our media review of Lady Vengeance. Again, kicking off our, I hope, a series of watching and reviewing very famous film and media in Korea's history. So.
Yeah. Again, thank you for our Patreon who suggested, they didn't explicitly ask us to review this movie, but they suggested the theme of going into this topic of revenge.
Yeah. Okay, Patreons. As always, if you want to support us, please consider doing so on Patreon. Our minimum tier is $1 a month. So if you think this episode was worth 25 cents, please consider supporting us there. And you too could be in our Discord suggesting topics like this for future episodes. Since our last episode, we have 3 new Patreons. First is Kelsey.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Oh, second is my aunt.
Oh,
I don't know if she wants us to, would like us to say it. I hope she's leaving Korea. Otherwise, I was going to hopefully have her on, but... my aunt. Thank you, Gomo.
Your cool aunt?
My cool aunt.
Oh, thank you. I'm so honored.
She's been devouring our content and sharing it with her Korean American friends.
Oh, nice.
So.
And has she ever expressed whether she wants to be on the pod?
Every time I ask, she just ignores my question, which makes me think that's her way of saying no.
Maybe it is.
But she's the type that I think would want to be on. She just doesn't know what she would share.
I see.
So, and then finally, Hassan. Thank you, Hassan.
Thank you, Hassan.
I believe from Canada. I don't know if that's too much information, but represent. Wait, neither of us is Canadian. I don't know. Okay, thank you all. Again, it goes a long way to keeping the lights on and keeping us motivated to put this out weekly. And with that, I think it's a wrap. That's
It's a
all
wrap.
for this week. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Give them a frontal of my Aja pump.
By the way, is it hierarchical or hierarchical?
Jun, I don't know.
I thought it was the latter.
Hierarchical.
Hierarchical.
I don't know.
Anyways.